Dr. Tunji Ogunyemi joins us. He's a lawyer and an economic historian looking at the 2016 budget. Good morning and thanks for joining us. Quite a whole lot has been happening if you look at some critical issues that have always been raised when it comes to budgeting in the country. Yeah. Now we're moving into another one, another phase. Even the kind of budgeting system we've always had has been highlighted on this program. But for 2016, there must be some, things that you thought that we should have corrected in order for us to have a proper budgeting system.
Granted that the president just came in May, 29th of May this year. And that means, of course, that it will need some time to get the budget system ready. But from the hint we got from the vice president, Nigeria will be embarking on a zero-based budgeting system. And that's beautiful. Don't forget, for about 50 years in our lives, as a nation state, we've been using the incremental system. And the incremental system, the armchair system, of course, this one has been interrogated beautifully by great authors. But the zero-based system has the eternal advantage of ensuring that every project that is included in the budget document must be proved, must be certified to have value added, and must actually add value. So if we are going to embark on a zero-based budgeting system, then every expenditure item must have justification.
Talking about justification very quickly, sorry to jump in there.
Yes.
What comes to mind is looking at the price of crude, which is one big determinant for our budget.
Exactly.
In fact, it is the only determinant.
It's actually been a recurring decimal that the National Assembly and the Presidency quarrel, they squabble over the issues of pricing and the benchmark, the minimum benchmark for price for petroleum products, crude oil, which is actually our main export. This year is $53. And we know, of course, that petroleum products have been selling, crude oil per barrel has been selling for significantly less than $50. I think as at the last count, $44 per barrel. That means that this year's budget will be short by about $8 in terms of budgetary mistakes. We advised the other time that this cannot be possible. Fitch was giving some optimistic data, and we knew this is not historical. History does not support Fitch when it comes to the issue of the price of oil. This year, one would have loved a situation in which the National Assembly will agree with the presidency that the benchmark for oil would be $40 per barrel. No more. That's realistic.
I was going to go back a little bit to the zero-based budgeting system.
Yes.
Because a lot of people will be asking exactly what it means, besides the fact that every project that is included there would be properly accounted for.
Yes.
What does it mean?
Actually, you get a better grasp of the zero-based budgeting system when you compare it very sharply with the incremental system. The incremental system means that you do not investigate or try to justify every item on the expenditure budget. You just had money. For example, how much did we spend on a particular road or spend on certain things? Maybe about $8 million last year. This year I just had about $200,000. So this year we're going to spend $8,200,000 without investigating whether the $8 million spent last year was actually justified or had actually been well spent, and whether value had been added, or that whether that $8 million was actually sufficient or more than enough for that project.
The question now will be, if when we're using the incremental system, we had difficulties getting people to come defend their budgets, because they get there and they spend hours, at the end of the day, they just top up, they just mark up and all of that. How effective would it be going to the zero base?
Because nobody was implementing discipline. If you don't defend your budget, you get zero allocation. You are disciplined. If we have the political will, why would a bureaucrat refuse to defend his budget? If you have a system in which you have $200 million allocated to your MDA, Ministry Departments and Agencies, last year, and this year we suddenly discovered that the project for which we allocated that money had actually been implemented. Why must we allocate the same money this year? So in order to avoid repetitive budgeting, a system in which you keep on funding a program that had already been implemented, it gives for leakages and wastages in the system. Zero-based budgeting cancels that.
Should this also be like a bedrock or a starting point for the multi-year budgeting system? Because you proposed that.
Beautiful. You see, if this government actually wants to achieve something significant in the area of budgeting, there must be a radical change from the single-year budgeting system, as of course compelled by the financial year 1980. The financial year says Nigeria's financial system should run from January to December. But if you have a multi-year budgeting system, what it's going to mean is that we will budget for about 3 or 4 years at a time. Actually, a government need not write more than 1 budget or 2 budgets at most. So if you have a multi-year budgeting system, you avoid the squabbles between the National Assembly and the presidency. 2, you are able to project afar. Government becomes more serious, and the only thing you need to adjust will be just the medium-term expenditure framework, which will be done by the National Assembly, factoring into the calculus the price of fuel or the price of crude oil at the international world market.
In our case now, where we're looking at diversifying the economy, so we're looking at other sources of income here, how would that work out eventually?
Oh, beautiful. It will work out in 2 ways. Number 1, if you have a multi-year budgeting system, you are able to bring in the revenue. You are able to tap into your revenue profile more efficiently, more effectively, in such a way that you give a long-term plan for your revenue earners. The revenue cash cow of Nigeria, of course, all of us know, NNPC, Nigerian Customs Service, Federal Inland Revenue Service, and the rest. So you are able to plan, you are able to give to them a long-term expenditure and revenue targets that we'll be able to achieve. And this will be possible. Thank God we have the TSA, into which all revenue must pool. And if you pool that revenue, then government is able to predetermine in the next 3, 4, 5 years what shall be its revenue profile.
You just said thank God, but for some, they think that some of the problems we're going through now is as a result of the TSA program.
That is not true. That's the teething problem you have when you are starting a new... Look, people don't like to change things. But once you have a decrepit system that is not serving you, it makes perfect sense to actually change it. The TSA is to instill transparency and accountability in the system. It is to bring in the revenue in the central pool. At any rate, that's what Section 162 of the CFR 1999, Constitution of the Federal Republic, actually compares that all revenue shall be paid into the federation account. Ditto for Sections 80 to 84 of the same Constitution. You do not begin to get your revenue a la carte and then expect that you'll be able to get the correct information as per your revenue capacity.
You know, there's always, you know, even when there's an attempt for us to have an early passage of the budget, we've always had this bickering between the legislature and the executive arm. Yes. Perhaps maybe some would say there's something that the executive is not letting the legislature know about, you know, maybe proper accounting system. Exactly. And so many other things.
Yeah, the revenue profile. Actually, the executive has been reticent in giving the full information. The full information? Yes, the full, total, accurate information to the National Assembly as to the exact revenue earnings, revenue income, revenue capacity of the federal government. Now, it need not be. The National Assembly members, legislators, are critical stakeholders. They are joint stakeholders in the system. The executive cannot claim or pretend to be the only, you know, arm of government that loves the Nigerian people. I mean, ditto for the legislature, ditto for the judiciary. The executive, the legislature in Nigeria, the House of Representatives and the Senate, are critical stakeholders that need to know the revenue capacity. That way, government will be able to either convince them to accept a significant slash in the income, in the remuneration of political office holders, and then they'll be able to plan properly for the medium-term expenditure framework. It is good that way, because if the National Assembly is abreast of the information with respect to the revenue profile of the country, then it will not squabble with the executive too much on the issue of benchmark or on the issue of expenditure. Take, for example, the issue of constituency projects. Constituency projects, technically, is just not proper. You don't put constituency projects and say National Assembly members should do constituency projects. That's in the turf of the executive. But if the executive actually gives the exact picture of this is how much we earn, this is how much we expect to earn, this is how we cannot earn because of X, Y, Z limitations, then the National Assembly will be impelled to see reason why the executive should spend money on certain things and not on some other things. It's important.
Leakages is another thing that we highlighted many months ago when we talk about how we can sharp the revenue.